The marginal growth of the country and of the economy rather, and the drop of fuel prices should not be your license to loosen the purse strings. Customers are urged to continue tightening their belts and not incur unnecessary debts. To discuss this, we are joined by Debt Rescue CEO Neil Roots. Neil, thank you so much for coming through. How on earth are you telling us, Neil, that we should not loosen the purse strings? I mean, we are approaching the festive season. Petrol is coming down, so it should be slightly cheaper. I should save a few rands here and there and be able to travel making those savings. So why are you saying we shouldn't spend?
Well, first of all, it's very good news to see that the petrol price is coming down and the economy has grown. So that's brilliant news. The reality is just that this was a very, very difficult year, and we should not lose sight of that. And this doesn't mean that the economy is going to keep on growing next year and that fuel prices are going to come down next year as well. We've seen in the past also that when we experience a reduction in the fuel price, the prices of other goods and services does not necessarily come down, as is the case when petrol prices goes up, because in that case, that usually filters through to the prices of goods and services, which then goes up in line with the petrol price increases. So the reality is that we've had a very, very difficult year financially amongst the consumers, and people should be vigilant when it comes to spending money, especially during the festive season, because people tend to spend a lot more than what they can afford during this time, and more than what they budgeted for. That's why we always encourage people to draw up a separate budget for the festive season.
I suppose you can sound those warning bells because, you know, being in the profession that you are in and in the work that you do, you encounter the results of not sticking to the warnings that you just issued now.
Exactly, and the harsh reality is that with most of the people that we help at Debt Rescue, and is that we see that almost nobody have their budgets drawn up. So people just spend their money without really planning and knowing what they can afford to spend on a monthly basis. So what then obviously happens is that people spend more than what they're earning, and they become over-indebted, and they fall into the debt trap. Now, the reality is also it's extremely difficult to get yourself out of the debt trap, especially on your own, and that's why there's help out there. And if people do find themselves in a situation where they are over-indebted, they must go out and get help, because we've got some of the best remedies in the world.
What are some of the items that are putting us into debt as South Africans, Neil? Is it, you know, short-term things that we perhaps get now around, you know, this festive season, things such as clothing and, you know, expenditure on credit cards, things that are short-term, or do we fall into a trap? For instance, we just recently had the whole Black Friday craze where, I mean, I remember just seeing that some of the things you'll buy now while it's Black Friday, but actually you'll be responsible for the next few years in terms of paying back. What is the nature and profile of the debt that you do see?
Exactly. So what we usually see during this time of year is that people tend to spend money on presents and for family and friends, because it's Christmas time, and also spending time on holidays. Now, it's all perfect if you've budgeted for that spending, but the reality is we've got all these specials, and like with Black Friday, and people were enticed to spend money on things that they didn't plan for, and the reality was then that we saw that people spent a lot of money on things that they didn't need at the end of the day. And in the past, we've also seen people taking out loans just to be able to spend money on or during Black Friday.
So talk to me about the situation in as far as the interest rates, for example, are concerned, right? Some of us have debts that, you know, are affected in terms of long-term property and things like those. The Reserve Bank recently predicted that initially it was 5 increases in the repo rate between now and 2020. So the first one has happened. They are predicting now that there will be 4 more. How worried are you about the ability of South African consumers who hold that kind of debt that is impacted by any fluctuation in the repo rate to be able to keep their heads above the water?
No, we are very worried because of the fact that when the repo rate goes up, it does not only affect people with home loans and vehicle finance, it affects all kinds of credit. And the reality is, if you look at unsecured debt, the interest rates that it carries already is extremely high. It's very, very high. And also, when people do find themselves in difficult situations and times where they struggle to pay for all their monthly expenses, they tend to take out more loans. And the problem with that is also that at some stage, when they do not qualify for loans anymore, then they approach loan sharks, which are not regulated by the NCR. And that's when things become very, very dangerous.
So what saying, at what point do I then decide that I'm really in trouble? I should approach someone, I should pick up the phone. Is it at the point at which I cannot secure any more credit to pay off some of the other loans, or is it at a point earlier? When do you know that it's time to approach someone to assist you?
Well, the reality is you should look after yourself. You should not wait for a credit provider to tell you that we're not going to grant you any more loans. You should know before that point, as soon as you find yourself in a situation where you do not have enough money at the end of the month to pay for all your credit installments and also for your living expenses, then you must know there's a problem, and you should approach somebody as soon as possible to help you, because like I've mentioned early on, we've got some of the best legislation in the world to help with that.
All right, thank you so much. Let's hope that enough of us heed your warnings, even as we think it's time to actually celebrate and enjoy the festive season. That is Neil Roots from Debt Rescue, giving us some insights into the situation and as far as managing debt is concerned. From here,